Welcome to the Greenway Outdoors Podcast, your trusted source for outdoor information and entertainment. The Greenway Outdoors is also an internationally syndicated TV show and conservation advocate aimed at bringing millennials and Generation Z into the outdoors. Welcome to the Greenway Outdoors.
The Greenway Outdoors is brought to you by Ram Trucks, built to serve, Motor Trend's Truck of the Year for the third year in a row, and by Bass Pro Shop and Cabela's. Your adventure starts here. Tracker Boats, fish the finest, and by these other fine sponsors.
Hello and welcome to episode 73 of the Greenway Outdoors Podcast. My name's Kyle Green.
I'm AJ.
I'm Jeff.
I'm Ryan.
And I wanted to kick off this podcast while talking about Hunter Nation. It's a 501c3 nonprofit whose spokesperson is none other than Ted Nugent. He's the one that turned me onto this organization. But I wanted to highlight what it's doing and why you kind of need to know about it if you're in the outdoor industry, if you're interested in the outdoors, if you like hunting or fishing whatsoever. So I'm going to kick it off with their mission statement because that makes the most sense. To be the united voice of the American hunter to protect our sport, our lifestyle, and our heritage, while standing for the principles of God, family, country, and our nation's Constitution. And it seems weird to me that perfectly great, beautiful explanation of words that they put together there 20 years ago would have been like accepted by everybody. They'd be like, oh yeah, Constitution, great. You know,
right,
but now
right.
You wear an American flag t-shirt and people hate you for it. Like,
right.
like you're a bad person
Yeah.
for something. You're supposed to hate your country now.
They riot against you.
Very
You're a patriot. It's like,
Yeah,
yes.
A patriot's like a weird word now. I'm like, yeah, I'm a patriot. Why wouldn't I be? So the organization set out, and they really got their big push in 2016, and they had a big influence in that election, actually, for the presidential election in 2016, where they realized that hunters and fishermen are not having a big presence at the ballot box, and sportsmen and women as well. They're not having a huge influence at the ballot box, and they're not voting, which seems weird to me because, I don't know, I would think they would be the ones to vote. You know what I mean? But they weren't. Statistically, they weren't. So this organization set out to inform them and encourage them to hunt and encourage them to vote as well as hunt and fish and get them involved in the entire process.
Right.
So this is kind of their key points. Hunters remain largely uninvolved in the policy process and in electing public leadership. Hunters don't have a powerful voice in the policies that affect their sport and lifestyle. Now, policies that are harmful to our country, American hunters, and the hunting lifestyle are frequently introduced at the state and national level. You know, I talked about I guess it was about a year ago now. Time is flying, COVID, right? I talked about the fact that they just banned the fur trapping in California. Now, they banned it because they don't like fur trapping. Let's be very clear there. But their reasoning for it was it became a tax liability. So what does that mean? It means that there wasn't enough people participating in the sport for the government to regulate it. Selling the licenses, having the DNR officers involved, anything that goes into making a program possible
Right.
so that you can hunt and fish for something. They were saying it became a tax liability because not enough people were participating.
So, not to play devil's advocate, but there's some people who would look at the program being cut as a good thing because the government is seeing that not enough money is coming in and it's going out, so they're allocating that money somewhere else.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. I'm actually glad you brought up that question because that is like one of the big rebuttals to that specifically. Now, the first thing you'd have to take into account is that do you believe that the state of California is capable of running a budget? Do you believe that they're capable of knowing what to do with a surplus of money? How to move it or allocate it elsewhere? Is it
Right.
going to be used for another sportsman program? No, it's absolutely
Right.
100% not. The other thing was their goal was to get rid of fur trapping because they were getting pressure from people that didn't like fur trapping in the first place. It's one of the most attacked of the hunting and fishing and gathering tactics. It's one of the most attacked ones that are out there because people don't like the way trapping works. So take that into account, okay? But also what you're going to end up with in those situations are they're going to spend more money by eliminating the program than they would if they kept the program, and I'll explain to you why. Look at the Cougars, for instance. So if they had a Cougar season in California, which would make perfect sense because there's so many of them, if they regulated it where they sold licenses and did everything they were supposed to, they would spend X amount of dollars. Honestly, in that one, it would be a profitable program because there would be so many people involved in it. There wasn't obviously as many in the beaver situation, but or the muskrat and the trapping situation, but in the cougar situation, there'd be plenty of people, so it'd be profitable. But they got rid of it because it hurt people's feelings. And there wasn't enough hunters and fishermen voting and being involved in making their voices heard, which is what Hunter Nation steps in and does. So because of that, they make it illegal. Then there's bound to be cougar issues, which of course there was. Matter of fact, we just watched a video of a guy's dog. He was camping there, just got attacked and killed by a cougar.
Brutal.
So because there's all these cougar situations and all these issues, then they have to hire sharpshooters to come in and pay a ton of money, tens of thousands of dollars to come in and hunt these cougars to get rid of them. And then they're killing them anyways, and then they're wasting them. They're burning them, not eating them. Michigan, we have sandhill cranes. You're not allowed to hunt them. They won't sell licenses for them. But if they're causing crop damage, they'll issue a tag to let a farmer kill them, but he's not allowed to eat them. He has to burn them, which to me, I feel like that would be an offense so great that when you got to the pearly gates when you died, like that'd be on your list. You had to explain yourself.
Yeah.
Like I think it's that bad.
Yeah.
You just wasted it.
Yes,
What?
it's completely offensive. So whenever you don't have hunters and fishermen gaining more rights and protecting the rights that they have from these terrible bureaucrats that are trying to take it from them, even as far as trapping in California, new laws, new principles, and new ideas come into play because we still have to deal with the wildlife. We still have to deal with them. They are looking at any point in time to take away those things. And if we don't participate, and that's the other thing, is where the Greenway Outdoors comes in, where Ted Nugent comes in, where Hunter Nation comes in, is we're inspiring the next generation to get into hunting and fishing so that enough people are participating so we don't lose those things. So it's a twofold fight.
Right.
We have to get people interested into it at the ground level, and we also have to get people protecting the rights at the Hunter Nation level, which is what they do. So not only do they inspire people to hunt and fish and have those policies, by having that army and having that group of collective people in Hunter Nation come together, then when there's something that comes to the ballot box that Hunter Nation's fighting, they can release their minions, if you will, to go out and vote to fight it. So it's a way of informing all the hunters and fishermen and outdoorsmen and women on what's going on. So Hunter Nation is building an army of informed and engaged outdoorsmen and women, amplifying hunters' voices at the ballot box, driving them to become involved in electing principled public leaders, informing hunters about where their lawmakers stand on key issues, empowering American hunters to become and remain involved in the policy process, advancing national and state policies rooted in the ideas of God, family, country, the outdoors lifestyle, and our nation's constitution, holding public leaders accountable, evaluating their stance, and encouraging them to embrace our principles and to stand strong on Hunter Nation's pillar issues. So by doing this, a lot of people, they go out to the ballot box and they're voting for president, and then they call it a day. They don't know what all the different things are that they're voting for other than that, or they're just voting for governor.
Right. There's usually a list of extra representatives on there that people only look at for that Republican or Democrat and then mark according to which party they're affiliated with.
Exactly. So whereas Hunter Nation comes in and says, hey, this is what you need to know on everybody, and this is where they stand. But then afterwards, after they're elected, we hold them accountable to what they said that they believed in, because that's why we voted for them.
Right.
So it's holding those people accountable and also notifying us. So let's say you got some appointed bureaucrat deciding he's going to try and pass legislation that's going to mess us up. They're going to tell you who to call, how to call, why to call, to reach out and say, hey, I'm not going to stand for this. I'm not letting this happen. So they're creating this group, and at no point in time are they telling you who to vote for. They're just informing you and saying, hey, if you like hunting and fishing, this is what this guy stands for, this is what this guy says, and this is what this guy says. So there's no parties here. It doesn't matter. Now, if you're voting for God, family, and the Constitution, I mean, it tends to lean away. You know what I mean? There's no, but that's not what it is. The point is to educate on these principles. So go to hunternation.org, check it out. There's a lot more information on them, but I was pretty impressed with their philosophy, the way they work, what they're working on, and I thought people should be involved. They have a membership that you can join. They've got all kinds of cool gear and merch and stuff like that, and different trips you can win and go on, and just check it out, hunternation.org. I think it's important. So speaking of ballots and voting and things that are important to people, right now there's a little bit of a war going on in Wisconsin. So Wisconsin has brought back their hunting season for gray wolves. So population in Wisconsin is somewhere around 1,000 wolves.
Sounds about right.
And they work in packs, obviously, and normally just the alpha and the alpha male or alpha female, those two will mate, and then the pups, which is normally like 4 to 6 pups, will be looked after by the entire group of wolves, and they all kind of raise them, have a hand in raising them. So that's kind of how their reproduction works. Normally it's once a year. Wolves live to be like 13 or so, and but they can reproduce all the way up to 10 and beyond. So
wow.
yeah, so kind of an interesting thing on the wolves themselves. So interesting thing was going on when Trump was in office. He passed legislation saying that he wanted the wolves removed from the Endangered Species Act. Now, the Endangered Species Act is interesting because it just makes it so nobody can touch anything. Whereas when you take them off, when they've hit their quotas, which they pretty much had hit all across the nation, once they had hit these quotas, it gives the power back to the state level. So it's not saying like kill every wolf that's out there. It's saying, okay, they're off the endangered list. We're not going to lose them tomorrow. Let's put the management of them back in the state hands. So that's what happened. And in Wisconsin, that was the case as well, which to me, if I'm being honest, makes a whole lot of sense. I think that they should be managed as a game animal because they are a game animal. And you can get into why people don't like the idea of hunting wolves. I don't really know if I want to. I don't really enjoy coyote hunting either.
Well, regardless of whether or not it's a game animal, it's still a top predator in most ecosystems. So
Yeah.
And they vary state by state.
correct. So they're, regardless of whether it's game or not, it needs to be managed in some sense.
If you had a pond and you had way too many northern pike in that pond, how well do you think your bluegill are going to do? How well do you think your bass are going to do? How long, so you have to manage it properly. So
Well put.
by but when it's fish, it's all good.
Right.
It's all, that's fine. It's all fine then. But as soon as it's about animals, everything changes. So when you take them off the endangered species list, it put the power back into the hands of the states. And now they're supposed to make reasonable decisions on the sustainability efforts of them. So they've decided what the sustainability efforts are going to be, and now the biologists are supposed to maintain that, how many are killed, and so on and so forth. So in the state of Wisconsin, there are currently 6 Native American tribes that are suing to try and stop the wolf hunt in November. Now, the reasoning for it is that basically the resource of the wolf is supposed to be split 50-50 between the tribes and the state itself as far as like hunting and fishing stuff. So if quotas, if you will. Now, these tribes, which I know the Chippewa tribes that have the treaties, they say that the treaties give them rights to half of the wolf quota in the territory. So they're not using their quota, though, to kill them because they look at them. They're like the role of the wolf in their
They're like origin story.
yeah. I don't want to say religion. I don't know what you would call it, but in their like
Their beliefs of
Thank
how
you.
the earth was started.
yes, that the wolf played a big role in it. So they're not killing the wolves. They're not killing that their quota of whatever. They're just using it to keep them. So there was basically. So I'm trying. It's like the story has a lot of different pieces, a big web. So I'm trying to pick out sections and go piece by piece. So the next section that I like to pick off is there's a group, and it's called Earth Justice. And they're the ones that they're suing the federal government already for Trump's legislation that made it so the wolves were taken off the Endangered Species Act. Because people like have this idea that the Endangered Species Act should be something that is like, it just means that animal's important. It doesn't mean that it should be managed. It just means it's so important nobody should touch it. So to take it, like, this is not correct. This is like their beliefs. This is how they feel.
So it instead of it just being like quotas, it's put this, if this animal is put on the list, under no circumstance will it be managed.
That's what they believe. Yeah, because it's like, well, to use a lion or a rhino or something people care about, elephants or whatever animal you want to put in there. Let's use a Marmaduke, just something stupid, okay? So Marmadukes, people, I don't even know if that's a real thing.
I think that's
It's a
the
big
name
dog.
of a dog.
Okay.
From a comic strip.
Okay. So Marmaduke's very rare. It's only one comic strip. So let's say Marmadukes are just this really cool predator. People love the Marmadukes, but there's not very many of them. So they put them on the endangered species list because they want them to bounce back. That's the original philosophy for putting them on the endangered list. But once the Marmadukes are on that endangered list, they're like, well, we love them. They're so sweet and cute, and they are ferocious, and they're cool how they kill, but I love them, and I just can't imagine who would want to hurt one of those things.
They
Yeah.
probably acquire
I just
a
can't
brand
imagine
somewhere.
them. But now there's so many Marmadukes. So they reproduce. So now there's tens of thousands of Marmadukes. There's plenty of them, and no matter what happens, there's always going to be, some people might think there's too many Marmadukes. But when you want to take them off the Endangered Species Act, people are like, well, no, you can't kill a Marmaduke. That's wrong. So, like, their idea is they're worried about you killing it. They're not worried about the fact that they're like, yeah, the numbers, the endangered species list is supposed to be based on numbers and facts, not emotions. But they make it about emotions. So this group, Earth Justice, is suing the government and asking Biden to step in. Now, the wolves are kind of separated into two groups. You got your eastern wolves, which are like your Great Lakes region wolves, and then you got your western wolves, which doesn't take a lot of common sense to figure out where they are at. So they're on the west side of the country. So this group talked to Biden, and so did this coalition of 6 tribes, and said, everybody's talked to the Biden administration, and Biden has come back and said, oh yeah, you guys are right. It's just getting too easy for these hunters to kill them, and these biologists are just basing everything on science, and they're just shooting them.
It's too easy to. What does that even mean?
That's a quote.
That's not even a good statement. Like, that has nothing to do with the science or the actual situation. They're easier to hunt. You mean they can now? Is
Yep.
that based on the difference from a year ago till now? What? That doesn't make any sense.
So the 6 tribes are represented by Earth Justice, which is one of several groups that are suing the federal government over the Trump administration decision last November to lift the Endangered Species Act protections for gray wolves across most of the United States and return management authority to the states, meaning the Department of Natural Resources or Game and Fish, depending on what state you're in.
Which makes sense, because if you make a decision in Wyoming about the wolf population, that may benefit the wolf population there, but it might not benefit the wolf population in Michigan or Illinois or somewhere else where they may have fewer and they need to make different decisions to properly manage their wolves. So it makes sense to have it by state and not by like a generic federal thing.
Blanket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Biden administration, I think it was 3 weeks ago, roughly, said federal protections may need to be restored for western wolves because Republican-backed state laws have made it much easier to kill the predators. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service initial determination that western wolves could again be imperiled launched a year-long biological review.
I like how they throw Republican in there.
They have to do that. I love it.
In my opinion, it should not be anything like natural resource related. Should not be like party driven.
Yeah, defined by one side.
Yeah, and a lot of the states that have more wolves tend to go Republican. So yeah, there would be more hunting there because there's more of them. What?
Yeah.
How dare you?
So, did you just say voter fraud? No, just kidding. So dozens of tribes asked the Biden administration one day earlier to immediately enact emergency protections for gray wolves across the entire country, saying states had become too aggressive in hunting them. They asked Interior Secretary Deb Haaland, I think that's how you say it, it's Haaland, to act quickly on emergency petition they filed in May to relist the wolf as endangered or threatened. Just put it back on the list.
Yep.
For any reason whatsoever.
Everything's emergency.
Just to fix their problem.
Just to be streamlined.
Okay, so that's kind of an overview of the giant situation. So then coming back to this, coming back to Wisconsin. So this is a quote directly from the Chippewa Indians. In our treaty writes, we're supposed to share with the state 50-50 in our resource, and we're feeling that we're not getting our due diligence because of the slaughter of the wolves in February. So this is something I don't quite understand. And this is essentially, it sounds like they set a quota of about 130 wolves could be killed. But then the hunters blew way past that to like 219 or something like that.
Which I don't understand. How does that happen?
Well, here's the thing.
Mismanagement.
Maybe. But I could understand a couple ways. Like, you know when you do the sturgeon fishing on those lakes?
Yeah.
And I don't know this, so this is a section of the story I don't understand. There's so many pieces to this, it's hard to grab every straw of every single thing. But like the sturgeon fishing on that one lake in Michigan where they do it, they have it where they're like allow 7 sturgeon per year to be speared. And you have to like get in a lottery just to be one of the people to go out, and then you have to have your phone on you at all times. And then once 7 fish are speared, they ring the siren, send the text, and say, stop fishing, pull it up, everybody quit, we hit our quota. So that you don't kill too many of them in that lake. Yeah. And that's how they manage them. I assume doing that with wolves would be a lot harder, right? Mm-hmm. So like when people turn them in, how they register them, you know, those sorts of things, not completely worked out. Now, here's the thing. If we'll say a quarter of the wolves in the entire state were taken out, as far as like the biological reproduction goes, that's a good portion of it, but that might be the management portion. Mm-hmm. I mean, at the end of the day, the amount of food on the landscape versus the people that are trying to hunt the deer that they're eating, the people are trying to hunt the small game that they're eating. I mean, those 1,000 wolves can wreak havoc on an ecosystem. Imagine the amount of deer that herd goes, 1,000 of them go through. I mean, they're eating tons and tons and tons of venison, small game, things like that. So killing a quarter of them, I don't have the science on it to determine whether that's correct or not, but it wouldn't surprise me if that was like, yeah, that's what you're trying to hit. I know a lot of times like 30% normally puts you over a limit, but technically this would be 20%, 22% of the herd. Mm-hmm. Even less so because it's 1,100. It's not 1,000. I think there's like 1,100 of them. So if that's the case, it would be under 20%, which would be probably a reasonable amount of take. So the tribe, especially considering like they considered it like, so if they were supposed to kill that many, that means that was how many the tribe could kill. Well, you wonder too, did they let it go over because the tribe wasn't actually killing any? And they're like, well, if you guys are going to use them, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I'm not saying that's what happened, but you could see how that would be the case.
Also, I wonder if it's like a skewed statistic where it's like, well, the hunters were allowed to kill 150 of them, but there was also farmers who needed tags to be able to take care of their cattle, so a few of them got killed that way.
No, that's supposed to be the total, although there is a statement, people are like, well, probably a quarter of them got taken out if you include poaching. So that was like an argument that they have, but like, I mean, they have to monitor that. The DNR has to monitor every aspect of everything, but the selling of the tags is what funds going after the poachers.
Right.
No. So you could look at it that way. So this tribal lawsuit comes 3 weeks after a coalition of wildlife aid advocacy groups sued to stop Wisconsin's wolf hunt in general. This fall in void a state law mandating annual hunts, arguing that the statutes don't give wildlife managers any leeway to consider population estimates. So they're like basically like a backseat driver saying you're not doing your job correctly. Hunters blew past their limit during a court-ordered hunt in February. The State Department of Natural Resources set the quota at 119, but hunters killed 218. Wow. I was pretty close. Wolves in just 4 days, forcing an early end to the season.
In 4 days?
Yeah.
Which you could see in 4 days. If they're not having a system where you call in like they do with those sturgeon, then how will they know in a matter of 4 days that people went in and killed that many wolves? So they're...
Right, so but then they can be like, but you said it was going to be this many, and you did double, and...
I figured it'd be pretty difficult to get that many, but 4 days, they're like, yep.
I would think wolf hunting would be tough.
That's my assumption.
That's what they were saying in Idaho, that it's you can do it, but no one does it because they're impossible to find. Although the geography is different and this and that, but still, everything I've heard about wolves is like they're pretty. It's the tough thing to do.
They hunt. That's all they do. So they're gonna know you're coming.
Which makes you think that the problem is worse than it's being recognized because there's so many that they're that easy to find.
Yeah, true.
So
Sure.
So then they use the word conservationist, which is a stretch. Then jumped all over the department with requests to cancel this falls hunt out of concerns that it could devastate the wolf population. Because if they do it again, what are the repercussions going to be of that?
Sure.
So agency biologists recommend setting the fall quota at 130, but the agency's board last month set the kill limit at 300.
Which,
So-
if you remember, is really only 150 if the Native Americans aren't going and taking their portion. So it's not that different.
So
Yes.
the tribes have claimed their half, but since they won't hunt wolves, the working quota for the state licensed hunters would be 150, like Jeffrey just said.
Yeah.
So the lawsuit alleges the board's decision to set the quota at 300 was a deliberate move to nullify the tribe's share and was not based on science. Well, that makes no sense because the 300 in the first place was based on science, right?
So what the tribe is doing is they get they can kill 150 wolves, but they're not. And
Yeah, the quota set at 300, but it was originally going to only be like 130, but now they made it 300 because they know that the Native Americans aren't going to use them, so they're like, they by making it 300, that was a deliberate move to just be like, all right, if you're not going to use them, we will. But the goal of the tribe is to say, if there's going to be 300 wolves that are allowed to be hunted total, and we get half of those, we're not going to hunt them. We want them protected. And in this way, the DNR is like, well, if you're not going to use them, then we'll use them. And they're like, no, then we don't even get what we're counting.
Yeah,
Right.
well,
Does that make
also-
sense?
They're dealing with population control because farmers are actively saying, please help us. You say there's only 1,000 wolves, but they're killing livestock.
Yeah.
Like they have a problem. They need to control
You imagine
that.
how easy it would be for a wolf to kill livestock? That'd be once they knew
mean-
that livestock was there, it's game on for life.
it's fish in a barrel.
Yeah.
They're
Jimmy,
literally trapped
come
in
here.
there.
These deer don't even move. They just sit there, and they're huge.
Well, and it's like you don't have to kill that many cows for it to cost thousands.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're just letting the wolves go crazy and do whatever they want, you're going to end up costing that state hundreds of thousands of dollars in product.
Yeah.
So you could be destroying your own economy.
The way I would like to end this conversation on this is this. It sure seems to me like the people that are fighting this entire process of putting them on the, making them state run, making them so you can hunt them, making them so you can, manage this population through science and hunting and selling licenses. It seems like the people that are against it don't live anywhere near where they're at. That's what it seems like to me.
That's always the case. They never, ever have to deal with the actual issue.
So just like leave those things alone. They're not hurting anybody.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then they can come live with you, and they can ruin your product and everything that you've bought and worked for, and which is what is happening to these farmers. These farmers pour their heart and soul into having a successful farm, and it's just being destroyed by an animal that could be taken care of. But everyone's saying, "Don't do that."
Put it on the endangered species list again, please.
He's like, I see him every day.
It's like changing the name of something. Be like, can you hurry up and make this sign? Just call it purple, so they'll leave it alone because they'll come and take it if it's green. It's like, well, it is green. No. You just gotta say it's purple anyhow.
Yeah.
It's like makes
Yeah.
no sense.
I think I'm glad that people care so much about the environment. I just wish they were better educated, and I think that's something that obviously it's the government, so the government's going to do what the government's going to do, but they need to do a better job of educating.
Can you imagine being a biologist dealing with this and being like it's like talking to a 7-year-old?
Yeah. Well, maybe that's like what this
But
state
nobody look at.
maybe that's the stance the state biologists need to take is like, hey, they go to their superiors and say, we want to be put on a pedestal where we have the opportunity to explain ourselves better. Because the same thing happened in Michigan when the vote for dove hunting came around. People don't know about doves or how it works. They think that
They don't know that you can eat them. People say, what are you going to do with them?
They're delicious.
right. It's a songbird. It's a songbird. Why would you do that? That's the bird of peace. And blah, blah. When that's not the case, it comes down to education.
Right.
Trust isn't built in a day. It's built over time. The early hours and the late nights. It's built by doing the work and pushing the limits every day. Because the promises we make are the promises we were built to keep.
If you'd like to help support the Greenway Outdoors, please like and comment on this podcast and subscribe to all of our channels.
Okay, so let me set the scene for the next story. It's a dark and spooky night in Saskatchewan. It's 1940. It's before yoga pants were invented.
Oh,
Yeah, I know, guys. I know. It's before all that. It is nighttime.
You're being for real.
Yeah, this is real. 1940 Saskatchewan, okay? And out of nowhere, thousands of Bufflehead ducks, which I don't know if you've ever seen them. They got a kind of a cool looking head on them.
bulbous.
Yeah, bulbous is a great word. Yeah. If bulbous was a duck, that would be the Bufflehead duck. And they've got like the purple and green in their hairs kind of on their head.
Well, they called them that because their heads are very large in comparison to how the rest of their body works, a lot like buffalo. So Bufflehead is a combination of buffalo head. So it's just
Really?
Bufflehead
That's
duck.
interesting.
I didn't know that.
Did you just make that up?
La, da, da.
Did you make that up?
No,
Okay, good.
actually,
That's a good one, Jeff.
The more you know. Okay. Here, I thought he was
Okay.
useless. Even you said.
I
No,
did.
before he got here, AJ said. No, you're like, hey, what were you guys talking
can't
about?
wait till we get to the science on this topic.
That was your point of the story. So what happened was thousands of ducks, buffleheads, rained from the skies in the middle of the night. And there's like some funny jokes. Like there was a newspaper from the 1940s that like had some pretty funny jokes. So like saying duck takes on a whole new meaning.
that's pretty
because
good.
they're falling from the sky.
Oh,
What was the other one? There was another one that was really good.
There was a couple, and it's an interesting time because this is right in the middle of World War II. So if all of a sudden your roof is just being bombarded by something, and you're sitting in your house and you hear thud 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 thud, thud, it's like whoa, what's going on here?
It's also weird because
Sound
like
the alarm.
you know when they hit after there was probably like some fluttering, like because they wouldn't all
Yeah.
die.
Yeah.
A lot of them were just stunned. And then they were making jokes about it like, all right, well, I know what everyone's eating for dinner the next 3 weeks. You know what I mean? Because like so many ducks fell
Yeah.
and everyone's picking up and eating them. And then Jeff wants to talk about the science on why this happened. Because at the time where they're like, were all these poisoned? Is this some like biological attack?
Well, they thought that because all of the lights in the city area, at the time, this is fairly new in the area, the electric lights, and they're thinking, oh, they see it and think it's like a shimmering lake. So they're coming in because there's fog and they're trying to land somewhere, and they dive bomb into this lake only to find that there's houses and things, and they're just
Instructions.
crashing into these houses and stuff. But then there was a local biologist many years later that was looking at it and was like, well, that's not really how it works, because there's also a lot of areas where this also happened, and it's kind of in the middle of nowhere, and electric lights didn't even really hit these areas for
No.
still fair amount of time, which is weird because it's the 1940s. You think that's like not that modern, but for sure the light bulb
They're
was
on their
around.
way.
But you know, in more remote areas, they were still, you know, basically dive bombing to get out of this fog. And as it turns out, there's a thing called Rossby Waves, which is the Earth's attempt at managing like equilibrium. So like Arctic air moves towards the tropics, and tropical air moves towards the Arctic, and it happens way high up. While these ducks are flying around, there's fog, and then all of a sudden they get hit with this huge blast of cold air, and they're like, whoa, 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 whoa. So they got to dive to get out of it, and they're waffling, you know, coming down, and next thing you know, there's a house or a tree
okay.
or just the ground. So
And they just all buckled all over the place.
Yeah.
Why can't they just keep flying?
because it's aggressively
their
cold
best.
and they can't see.
Maybe it's a pressure thing.
The winds are also pretty.
It pretty much like
aggressive.
froze them. Like
Imagine-
they weren't working like they should. They were numb.
Imagine you're just walking down the street, and then all of a sudden you get hit with this aggressive gust of like 20 mile an hour of like 20-degree wind when it's like 70
Oh, it's
outside.
that cold.
Like all of a sudden, yeah, it's Arctic air.
It's like
And
that
they're-
scene from Day After Tomorrow.
Yeah, and they're getting hit with this really
just
cold
like
air
that.
while they're really high up, and there's fog and they can't see. So they panic. You know.
Judge much?
When
He
was
took 2 pilot lessons. Now he can fly better than ducks.
two? When was the birds horror story written?
It's 1940. I think we made that clear.
No. There's a
There's a story.
I know.
You ain't got
okay.
no culture.
That's Alfred Hitchcock.
Is
I
it?
took an
Wow.
Alfred Hitchcock class in college.
Wow.
I talk about it all the time with
Wow.
AJ. It's one of the classes I took in college was
Yeah.
Alfred Hitchcock class.
It's not that impressive. You had to pay money to know that.
Well, yeah, he paid to bring.
You were in a
this fact
fraternity.
out.
You paid money to have friends. I don't want to hear about it.
It might be an Alfred Hitchcock movie, but it is not an Alfred Hitchcock story.
Yeah, he didn't write the original.
It is by Daphne du Maurier. In 1952, which isn't far after when this would have taken place. So I
Yeah.
wonder if that could be
I like that.
some of the
An early inspiration.
early inspiration of where that
Dramatic
came
experience turns into a story.
Yeah.
There are a lot of de Merarers in Saskatchewan. So
Yeah.
from. It would make sense.
I like that. I'm running with it.
Her story. I'm gonna look up where the inspiration came from. Inspiration. Okay. Background. Du Maurier.
God, I'm so glad we let Ryan take over the story.
his French is phenomenal.
He's killing it.
Okay, so I'm just gonna call her
He
Daphne.
slams his phone down. We're just gonna.
Probably
this,
best.
Geez, you're on full Kyle mode, just changing people's names to fit what you can say.
So I wish
Touche.
the inspiration behind this story was a little bit better, but the inspiration for the story was the sight of a farmer being attacked by a flock of gulls as he plowed a field. So that's kind of pretty boring. Stupid story.
I always root for the weird one. Weird theory.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna switch topics. I thought.
Oh, okay. Well,
I thought we all had enough.
Yeah,
Just gonna
we're
go
we're
ahead
over it.
and put
You
this
keep
bad boy
going.
down.
All right, one more DNR story since we've been all over them today. There was some poachers busted, and it was in Missouri, and they were it was a group of how many was it?
16.
Jeff? 16 guys from out of state, and they were hunting squirrels for a couple days. Who's like what? But anyhow, and they they went out and hunted squirrels for a couple days, and someone called in a tip to the DNR and said, "Hey, these guys are hammering the old bushy tails." And so the DNR officer went out, found out that they had actually shot over their limit by 151 squirrels.
I'll
Yeah.
never understand.
It's almost 10 per person. That's nuts.
Also, you think out of 16 guys, someone would be like, "Hey,
Yeah.
I want to know who
Well,
orchestrated
hang on.
it.
So they went out and they hunted for at least 2 days, and they got 460 some squirrels, something crazy. So the bag limit per day is 10. So they could each take. So all of them together could take 160.
It's a lot of lures.
So in 2 days,
Yeah,
look at what you did. You said you can go out and get.
Yeah.
squirrel and-
no.
You did this.
No. Don't you do that.
But
That's funny.
so over 2 days they could take, what's that? 320 squirrels, which blows my mind. That's so many squirrels. What would you even do with that many?
No,
We've
the
had
position
trouble
limit's
getting
only 2
two.
days worth. So that's
Yeah, 2 days worth. So that'd be 320 squirrels.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Now what happened was they got caught on the 3rd day. If they were hunting,
let's let it ride.
if you don't take the possession limit into which that's debatable, they could have taken 480 squirrels in 3 days with 16 people. So they were under their daily limit.
Quite the militia.
But they had their possession limit was too much. They got caught in the middle of, they were actively cooking and smoking them. If they had just donated some to a church, they would have been fine. Or if they had just eaten
Don't help
if
them.
they had just eaten faster.
Still.
Give him that. Give him that option.
Yeah, that's
But that's still so many squirrels.
that's a lot of squirrels. That's a whole lot. So
So what was the punishment?
it's still being figured out. They were all cited individually though.
Oh, okay.
So because they'd be like, well, he shot 100. They could dump it on him.
Yeah.
One
Well,
guy could take the fall. It's
They-
like the
they
last
choose-
guy in the
they
car
choose
accident.
that one
was-
friend.
the way they got around that was that you if you are hunting that many squirrels, if you're hunting with a group, you have to keep yours separate, and you have to know which ones are yours.
And they didn't do
You
that.
either mark them or something to that effect, and they didn't do that. They just had, and there's a picture. They have, it's an obnoxious number of squirrels.
Like
just
Chet shot 'em
looking
all.
at them.
They were like
Oh.
smoking them whole though. It looked like
Yeah.
in the picture. What's that about?
Well, I mean, if you cook them over fire, that I mean, it'll smell god awful, but it'll cook the fur off.
That'd be the only way you'd ever not have fur on your squirrel meat, wouldn't it?
You say that like you're good at removing the fur. Either.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible.
I'll go until it's off though.
Absolutely.
Whereas you'll be like,
What's it? Him? He just leaves the fur on.
he doesn't care.
I've never witnessed
He'll
that.
hand you
I
never
clean
eaten a
'em
squirrel.
and rinse them.
Yeah, I have.
No, you
Every
haven't.
squirrel you might get, when you cook it, there might be like 4 or 5 hairs left.
No.
Whereas he'll go until they're done, but he'll only do one squirrel in 20 minutes.
I
where I'll get
don't
through,
want to
like,
hear
10
about the
of
hair
them.
thing because I've seen you eat chicken wings that still have like the
With you.
I had no issue with it.
Yeah,
And-
I didn't love that.
And you didn't, but you
Wait,
still ate it.
Wait,
I did.
chicken with what on it?
We got from the barn here in Fenton the other day. We got chicken wings.
To be,
Oh,
let's
yeah. I
preface
don't think
this
those were
with you're
hairs,
calling
though.
it the barn. The barn in Fenton is a restaurant that
Yes.
They know how to cook chicken wings in the sense that they actually cook them well enough. I like a crunchy out shell. I don't like a gummy out shell whatsoever. I mean, I like the skin to be crunchy. And they have hot honey, which is like one of the best flavors I've ever had in wings.
it was really good.
And they have a dry rub, which I'm not a dry rub guy, but they've got the Cajun dry rub that's so good. So I get half and half. But the problem is like their wings are hairy.
Oh, they still have some of the down feathers on them?
They have,
Yes.
I can.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
It's
Is
the,
it-
it's
is
the
it
down
actu-
fat- it's
is
the,
it-
it's the hairs. It's the hairs.
yeah,
that you would,
it'd be
like
as
if
if
you're
you-
plucking a duck and you didn't do a good job.
Is it the hairs off the what do you call that?
I get
There's
all
the wing,
flats.
there's
I get
the,
all
like,
flats.
There's
I'm saying the word.
flats with the the extra ridge where that's where the extra feathers are.
Correct.
Is it those?
Yeah.
Yes.
Or is it other ones?
It's those.
It's not real feathers. It's
Okay.
the hairs.
Those
It's the
are-
hairs.
Those are really hard to get off in that area.
Yeah, well, you could burn
Other
them
than the
off.
fact that they're a restaurant, I don't blame them, but I blame
Well,
them.
I'm so like,
glad
and
it
it's
happened.
funny. Like the hairs get deep fried too, so that they're like they're more prominent because they got
crispy hairs.
Yeah.
they got a layer of dough on the outside of them.
So
Huh.
the barn, clean that up. But other than that, I like your food. I really do. And that's a good time. There's a place they got bag toss. You can.
You
if your food's
got-
not ready.
In the summertime, you've got 2 volleyball courts and bag tossed or cornhole, and then in the wintertime, they turn the volleyball courts into an ice skating rink and do tournaments. And
Wow.
yeah, pretty cool
Nice.
place.
The barn. Well, thank you so much for tuning into the Green Bay Outdoors podcast. I hope you enjoyed this random
They're not a
compilation.
sponsor,
Just
to be
random.
clear.
Yeah, they're definitely not. I hope you enjoyed this.
Good food.
This random topics and the typical Greenway Outdoors podcast of all over the place. But this information, it's an hour-long podcast every single week. You'll find it at Fridays at 5:30 p.m. If you're listening to this on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, anything like that, go to our YouTube channel. You can watch it and see our ugly faces and all the stuff we're talking about if we happen to be referencing a picture. That way you can actually check it out there. If you don't have YouTube and you live under a rock, or you're just looking for another cool way to watch it, check out Carbon TV. There's lots of good hunting and fishing shows on that
Free app.
network, and you can watch our podcast there as well.
I'd also like to add, just share it with your buddies. We always see our numbers go up during the fall because everyone's hunting and hunting season, blah, blah, blah. Share it with your buddies. Always helps us
Tell your
out.
friends.
It's good to know that
Yeah.
people are listening.
We like you, so you should like us.
Yeah.
Click
Yeah.
the like
Listen.
button, subscribe,
Hit
do all
the,
those
hit the
things.
little bell.
Yeah, hit the little bell. Yeah, get the little notification so you know when we post something. But in addition to that, we have an actual TV show, the Greenway Outdoors TV show. It's on Sportsman Channel on Saturdays at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's our main show. This is our secondary. This is our podcast. We do this every week. This is a great way for us to interact with people, talk about current events and topics. But our main TV show, the highest production in the outdoor industry, is something that I think you will enjoy. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Write us. Let us know what you'd like to hear about. Jeff is the one who's in charge of the website. So if you're upset about the recipes not always being updated, that's your guy right there. Write into us. Tell us what you want to see. Thanks so much for tuning in. Stay green.